boast the solid achievements of the first person ever to hold the office of President of the United States by appointment. Christ, what's the point of bringing that up? Ford's biggest problem, if you didn't count the pardon, was that he owed his goddamn job to Nixon. And I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, where else in the world would the winner go pay a call on the runner-up? Well, what winner but Jerry would be dumb enough to go to the hotel room of the man he'd just beaten, barely, as if he were room service rather than the goddamn President of the United States? Same as he'd pissed away the bicentennial, giving a half-dozen dopey speeches instead of one big memorable address. No sense of any occasion's demands and opportunities. This could all have turned out worse, of course. The party could have decided that Nixon's replacement and partner was so beyond the pale that they wouldn't even think of nominating him. They could have turned to some noble son of a bitch like Richardson, just to purify themselves for the voters. No, he wouldn't raise his blood pressure higher than Pat's by thinking about that cocksucker, who, after all, was going nowhere fast. The London Embassy and then Secretary of Commerce. What did they call it? Downward mobility. Christ, the bastard had done better under Nixon than Ford. The former president was, on this summer California night, still in a jacket and tie. He never lets himself be without either when he goes to this office just yards from the house. If he starts sitting around in a banlon shirt, that'll be the end of any chance to climb back even halfway from the hell of the past 2 years. Exile, they called it. Christ, more like house arrest. As Nelson went on, Nixon did allow himself to loosen the tie a bit, an action that tugged his gaze toward the accumulating typescript of his memoirs, piled on a cabinet near the window. He was up to 1970, and the work was getting harder all the time. Try telling the story of your administration without access to your own damn papers. Everything remained under the government's lock and key 3,000 miles away, and Jerry Ford wasn't about to intercede on his predecessor's behalf for the sake of mere history. The little recent punishments, postscripts to the loss of the presidency, were turning out to be more inventive and sadistic than the giant axe that had fallen 2 years before. Only weeks ago they'd thrown him out of the New York State Bar rather than allowing him to resign. Oh no, they weren't going to let him get away with that again. Not when disbarment could be made into a miniature version of the impeachment he'd escaped. You almost had to admire their maneuver, something worthy of Colson in his best days. Pat, who'd never wanted to be anything more than the wife of a lawyer, had taken the disbarment especially hard. The social disgrace of it, he supposes. It had, he was sure, contributed to the worst blow of all, this stroke. If she were well, she'd be coming in here, fetching him for the short walk back to the house and dinner, scolding him when she saw he'd already fixed himself a cocktail from the little cabinet on which the typescript sat. Put a little more water in that, pal. His imagination could so clearly imagine her saying it, her smile untwisted and her speech unslurred. Those sons of bitches, Bernstein and Woodward, had made her out to be a drunk. They were the main cause of this stroke, as surely as if they'd injected her with something. The Final Days. He'd told her not to read it, and she'd promised him she wouldn't. But she'd borrowed it from one of the 2 secretaries he had here each day until 5 o'clock. A gal who'd been skimming it, maybe for libels, but probably just out of curiosity. One thing you could bet on, if Rose was still with him, she'd never have left the goddamn thing on the desk where Pat could see it. Reading the book over 4th of July weekend is what sent the blood bursting out of her veins and brought on the heartbreak to which he now paid daily witness. To see his wild Irish Rose, playing with a preschooler's blocks, trying to get back the coordination in her fingers by pressing them into a little steeple. He turned his gaze toward the huge oriental fan mounted on the wall, something she'd been given in China, not in '72, but during their trip this past